Good day and welcome to today's conversation podcast. Today we are doing a remote cast of a guest, a special guest who's in Canada, and we'll do a remote cast, but I think we'll not be disturbed by the failure of technology. I hope it will go very well. He's well known when he served as General Secretary for the Council of Churches in Zambia. He was very instrumental in the activities of the day, constitutional issues and governance issues. Today I'm privileged to host Reverend Dr. Japhet Ndhlovu. He is no stranger to all of you. He's one of our most eminent ambassadors across the world, who is now based in Toronto, Canada. Reverend, welcome to today's conversation podcast, and I'm so sorry that we had so many glitches just to arrive at this. I've been chasing you from day one that you can participate in our conversation. Welcome to today's conversation podcast.
Thank you very much, and it's such an honor to be with you and to be with your viewers and listeners.
Thank you very much. Reverend, we need to start with your early life. Many people know you as this distinguished person. You said, like I said, in your position at the Council of Churches in Zambia, you were a vocal, not critic, but a voice of reason in our country, especially on governance and constitutional issues. Then, like I stated, you are one of our biggest ambassadors. You went to Kenya on behalf of the church, and now you're in Toronto, Canada. But let's back on, because our young people watching have no idea that you rise to this position. You could have just been among stars. You could have gone to ordinary schools here. Let's start from there, Honorable Japhet Ndhlovu. Your answer.
Sorry, you broke off there. The line got cut. If you could just repeat your question.
Okay. You are an eminent person in our country, and you are one of our biggest ambassadors abroad, serving the church. You are currently based in Toronto, Canada. But I want you to inspire our young people, because our people think you rise to this position from nowhere. Yet you was in an ordinary life from Zambia here. Let's start with your early life.
Yes, I was born in Mufulira. So my father mined copper for 35 years, and I was born in clinic number 5 on the copper belt in Mufulira. And this is just 6 decades ago. I started my primary school education at Mufulira Mine Primary School, and later qualified to go to secondary school. I was at Mufulira High School or Mufulira Secondary School. So my life really started in Mufulira on the Copper Belt province. That's where I was born and went to primary and secondary school.
At what stage did you think you pursue the career of the clergy?
So when I was at secondary school in 1979, I had a transformative event in my life. I fell in love with Lord Jesus Christ. So I embraced the gospel. And this relationship with Jesus Christ that started when I was just in Form 2 warmed up my heart so much that the love relationship kept growing and growing and growing. And I had what I term as the tapestry of God's hand upon my life in various circumstances, giving me strong impression of the calling to ministry. Of course, I did not understand it, because if you were a child of a miner, we aspired to be miners.
Correct.
And so this ministry thing was quite strange. In fact, when I told my father about it, he didn't even speak to me. He was quite upset. He didn't understand what it is I was talking about. And when I told my mother affirmed my calling. And so I had 5 different incidences where people spoke into my life. And then I had 5 different dreams. And so these 10 incidences, 5 different people in 5 different years, and 5 different dreams in 5 different moments and circumstances brought me to a situation where I was convinced that I needed to give my life to God for full-time service. And I absolutely have no regrets. I have continued to love God. And so later, after secondary school, I went to Kaniki Bible College. So I'm one of the founding students of that university. Now it's called Kaniki Bible University. I did 1 year there. And in that time, it was very clear that I needed to give myself to my church, which is the Reformed Church in Zambia. And I spoke to my principal about what I was experiencing and feeling. And he affirmed my call and said, yes, I knew that you had a call in your life, even when you joined this college. I spoke to my classmate. Friends now have new titles. He's called Apostle Jefferson Mwenda. Jefferson Mwenda, who also confirmed, and we kept praying together in that room. So from there, I left Kaniki Bible College after 1 year and joined Justo Mwale Theological College. Today they call it Justo Mwale University. That's where my formation took place. That's where I was formed into pastoral ministry in that undergraduate training for 4 years. And so after finishing the 4 years, I was sent to the eastern province of Zambia, in Mazimoyo, in Chipata district. And that's where I got ordained to the ministry of Word, Sacrament, and Pastor. And now it has been 36 years in ordained ministry, serving in various ecclesiastical positions.
Congratulations. Congratulations. I think those are milestones in your life. But what led you to activism, the call of justice? The Reverend we saw was one that spoke on issues of public governance, constitutionalism, and essentially issues of justice. At what stage did you become this activist man of God?
So part of my training, especially at Justo Mwale Theological College, and when we were looking at the prophets in the Bible.
Yes.
We're talking about Hosea, Joel, Amos, Obadiah, Jonah, Micah, Isaiah, Ezekiel. The studies in those prophets really inspired me so much that these prophets were involved with their day-to-day lives. They did not just speak about the reign of God as a future thing. They spoke about the reign of God as present reality. And when you have Malachi shouting and saying, let justice roll like a river. And so I was very inspired during those studies of those Old Testament prophets. And sometimes I would imagine myself, what would a modern day prophet be like in Zambia if we were to speak in the life and living of Zambia? And so I got inspired from there, and already with my classmates and other ministers, we began to agitate within the Reformed Church in Zambia because we were in partnership with the Dutch Reformed Church, which established the Reformed Church in Zambia. And as young ministers, we were wondering, why are we in cahoots with a church that promoted apartheid? And so one of my very first National Synod meetings which we had, the conversations were very hot at that time because we spoke and said the church needed to cut ties with apartheid Dutch Reformed Church. Of course, the senior ministers were not very happy with that agitation because they said our pension is being kept in South Africa. Our pension is being paid for by the Dutch Reformed Church. Are we together?
You can hear me?
I can hear you now. Sorry.
Okay, thank you very much.
So that agitation which we started really kind of baptized me. And that synod did appoint a delegation to go to the Dutch Reformed Church in South Africa to communicate a message that their theology and their philosophy was out of order, especially when we consider that all human beings were created by God in the image.
Did the Dutch Reformed Church in South Africa appear like they were supporting the institution of apartheid?
Absolutely. I mean, they founded the theology of apartheid. They founded the theology of apartheid. They crafted it by taking certain passages in scripture and beginning to misinterpret and abuse them. So they were clearly the people that founded that system of segregation, and they were saying, no, it's a segregated development. But as we all know, it wasn't just segregated development. They were denying that dignity of other humans, that some humans were more human than others. And yes, we did push the Dutch Reformed Church, and there was a period that the leadership was very, very, very uncomfortable because as young ministers, we kept saying, no, we should cut all the ties with this apartheid church. And of course, things began rolling from there to other pieces.
Oh, wonderful. You were privileged to be appointed as executive director, at the Secretariat Council of Churches in Zambia. And this was during a momentous period in our country. Let's speak to that period.
Yes, indeed. It was a privilege and a grace, indeed, the grace of God that I was appointed General Secretary instead of Executive Director.
Oh, sorry, General Secretary.
Yes, the General Secretary of the Council of Churches in Zambia. And that position makes you the spokesperson of the organization. And yes, it was a very interesting period in Zambia because there were constitutional conversations. We were clear in our minds that the constitution we had entered with in the democratic dispensation was not sufficient to govern us in the democratic dispensation. And so we wanted a devolved form of government with a constitution that would allow reducing the powers of the presidency and ensuring that the powers were distributed in institutions rather than just in one office. And so we began the agitation and joined together with the Evangelical Fellowship of Zambia, the Catholic Bishops' Conference, the non-governmental organizations, NGOCC and the Law Association of Zambia, and that's how the Oasis Forum was born during that time. And Oasis, because that was the venue. Oasis was the venue. It was a restaurant somewhere in Showground where the
it was a venue of your inaugural meeting.
Correct. Yeah, so it was an interesting period of time to work together with colleagues from these other church mother bodies and non-government organizations and the Law Association to advocate that change for a desired constitution that would govern a democratic dispensation.
I think this is the first time you're meeting politicians trying to treat you as political opponents. They will accuse you, members of the clergy, and invite you to the politics, that join the politics because of your talk on issues of governance. How did you treat that matter?
Yes, indeed, and a particular reference to the time we had President Levy Patrick Mwanawasa, may his soul rest in peace. When he was president, he was quite agitated by the fact that we were pushing for what we called a people-driven constitution-making process, and not a process that was under the Inquiries Act. And we were agitating and mobilizing the people so that we can move on the process of this people-driven constitutional making process. And the president was not very happy. And I remember one particular time during a campaign, he had somewhere in Kapilimposhi that he named me, because I was chairperson and spokesperson of the Oasis Forum at that person, that I should stop hiding in the church, I should come out and join politics, and he said he was going to whack me. Those are the words he used. It was, I mean, and challenging to hear such words from the head of state. The head of state was Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, challenging an ordinary preacher who only had the Bible and nothing else. So it was the strength from the people, but also the convictions that we had, that we deserved better, we deserved to be governed better, and we needed a document in place that could help to stipulate how we should be governing ourselves as a people of Zambia. So it was not easy, and it was not just the public statements. There were other things that used to happen in terms of the politicians trying to intimidate us. If you remember, at one time, we were even summoned to parliament because we had threatened members of parliament that whoever had voted against the people-driven process, constitution-making process, would be decampaigned. And we did. We had the Post newspaper those days, and we put up pictures of all the members of parliament who voted against people-driven process.
I remember the name and shame program you had.
Indeed. And it was not easy because politicians kept, talking to us and saying, you guys are not even elected. We are elected. We have the mandate of the people. And we said, but we are all sharing a country where we are leading people. It is all about the Zambians.
Yeah. I want us to come back to our country. We are celebrating the Diamond Jubilee, the country's 60 years this year. But before we get to that, just update the country. I know you've had training in South Africa, Ireland, and then you moved away from this country to Kenya and currently in Canada, Toronto. Just update the audience just that path when we come back to reviewing our country?
Yes, indeed. After Justumale, as I indicated, I got ordained, and later I went to do a postgraduate diploma in social youth work at Mindolo Ecumenical Foundation, from whence I was appointed to become a chaplain at the University of Zambia. So I became a student chaplain. We were two chaplains, a Catholic chaplain and a Protestant chaplain. Later in life, I did go to serve at the Kamwala Reformed Church in Zambia. And during that time, that's when I went to Ireland to do my Master of Philosophy in Ecumenical Theology. Fast forward, I also studied at the University of South Africa in Pretoria, where I did a Master of Theology, MTH in Missiology. Fast forward, I did my doctorate studies, my PhD at Stellenbosch University, which is in South Africa. So I was doing these studies while working, while serving in different roles. In fact, my PhD took me close to 7 years, because I even failed the first time I went to do my defense.
The country was keeping you busy with constitutional issues.
Indeed. I had to be sent back to go and rewrite certain sections of my dissertation, and then went back again to do my viva voce, my defense, and the second attempt I was able to make it. And after serving in Zambia at the CCZ, I was appointed as an executive staff for the All Africa Conference of Churches, so based in Nairobi, Kenya. After the period in Kenya, after my...
What is this organization? Is it just for the Reformed Church, or is an interdenominational body?
So the All Africa Conference of Churches is an ecumenical, Pan-African movement, organization, with membership drawn from mainline Protestant churches, indigenous African churches, Orthodox churches, and so by and large, many Protestant organizations or churches in Africa. And we have all the councils of churches in Africa as associate members of the All Africa Conference of Churches. So it's an ecumenical, Pan-African ecumenical body.
When did you move to Canada?
Moved to Canada, so in Kenya, I served also after the AACC. I taught in university. I was senior lecturer, head of theology at the Presbyterian University of East Africa. And after my time there in 2013, moved here to Canada, where I started working as a local minister in Newfoundland. And then I just served as a local minister for 2 years, and I was appointed to become Global Partnership Coordinator for Southern Africa and Southeast Asia, a position which I served for just about 5 years. And then I was appointed as Executive Minister for the Church in Mission Unit, which is my current role. And I oversee global partnership work in 27 countries, and anything related to justice work within the United Church of Canada.
Oh, wonderful. You see, I was justified to call you one of our biggest ambassadors abroad. We celebrate Zambians, that are out there doing such special work, because you carry the Zambian, passport. Yeah. Let's come back to our country. We are 60. In 1964, our country was one of the wealthiest countries in the world. We were far richer than Singapore, China, South Korea, and others. Even our economy in Africa, I think we are among the most urbanized and somehow a middle-class country. Our economy was a private-led economy, and we are the thriving multi-party democracy. 60 years later, we are among the poorest people on earth, despite the wealth we have as a country. What did we do wrong? What can be done right? How can we ensure that the next 60 years could be better for our country? Let's start with your reflections, and we'll go around our heads of states, because those are easier epochs to check what could be done better. Let's start with Dr. Kenneth David Kaunda, our founding president.
A wonderful, humble man with Christian convictions, who also had a very strong philosophy of governance, a philosophy of governance that was described in some of his statements, and particularly the philosophy of humanism, where our president continued to remind us that humanity was at the center. Of course, he said man at the center, man at the center. This is 2024, so we say humanity at the center of everything. And the philosophy of building one Zambia and one nation. And we did see that Dr. Kenneth Kaunda and his governance led to a number of critical developments. The university itself was created at that time. Look, today we have many universities in the country. That time there began to be a process of developing teacher training colleges. And so every province in Zambia had a teacher training college, and there seemed to have been a principle or policy that when teachers graduated, they were sent to other provinces. And of course, these teachers, being young people, began to settle in other parts of Zambia. And so today we have so many intermarriages in Zambia because of that principle of one Zambia, one nation. I think that time copper prices were doing so well, and so they helped in developing the country and the infrastructure that was needed, not just the teacher training colleges. There were different industries that were created. Each province in Zambia had a particular industry focusing particular commodity. Even my own eastern province, we were manufacturing bicycles in Eastern Province.
Yeah.
Apart from agriculture, there were specific industries in each province that were kind of the engine and supporting the economy. So the philosophy for Dr. Kaunda was clear. It was clear. It aimed at developing this one Zambia and this one nation, but also devolving economic activities and economic development into provincial headquarters, with the focus that it would then go into other towns and other rural areas. And somewhere, somehow, something went wrong. I think the fact that, first of all, we changed from being a democracy and became a one-party state. That was, I think, was a mistake. Of course, different analysts will say, no, that's what Zambia needed at that time, facing enemies from apartheid South Africa and other countries within the region were not independent, and so a single party state is what we needed. But I think there was a mistake in my view that we moved away from democracy because the one-party state, even if it was called one-party participatory, became oppressive. I mean, in the long run, it became oppressive, and the spaces of opposition were shrunk, and people could not oppose the Wamuyaya syndrome that came up. Well, many other things, and I think analysts and writers have spoken and written about that era of Dr. Kaunda. We were on a good trajectory, in my view, but something somewhere within the governance, I think when people overstay in power, sometimes there are those consequences that they miss the intended vision, the intended goal, as it were.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. The one-party state clearly is stand on the legacy of Dr. Kaunda. Many feel and trace the descent of our country from those decisions. It could have helped on issues of national peace and security, but of course, I think it created a dent on issues of human rights. And you know, when the decisions are made unilateral, of course, Dr. Kaunda will be remembered for his unique role to unite our various tribes and making a nation out of many nations. So we had a call for multi-party democracy in 1990, and came the MMD led by Dr. Frederick Chiluba. Give us your reflections of that period.
I think two big achievements that the era of democracy brought to Zambia. There are many, I think, people could look at, but for me, two things. First of all, that we tested democracy. We tested a peaceful transition of power. And kudos to the late Dr. Kenneth Kaunda, he's in peace, that he peacefully transferred power to Dr. Chiluba, and that under the Chiluba government, as Zambians, we tested freedom of speech, freedom of association, and then there was a sudden boom economically to liberalize the economy of Zambia. Of course, I think we, somewhere again, the analysts have told us we went a bit too far. There were certain institutions we could have saved for the country, because those of us that have traveled have seen and have known that there are certain industries that are still kept by government somehow, even if it is at a provincial level, you know. So the era of democracy was a big thing. The era of empowerment was a big thing. Suddenly, all the city council or local council or municipality houses started being sold. Okay, it did have a dent on the incomes of the councils, but people got empowered. And I think we also saw the Zambians beginning to have a desire to own a piece of land and begin their own personal development. There was a lot that began to happen in terms of infrastructure. We saw the transport industry growing, a lot of minibuses, a lot of taxis and things like that. So there was this era and there was that time that Zambians just began to enjoy the space in terms of democracy. And somehow again, oh Lord have mercy, I don't know what happens when people become politicians. They do one term and they do the next term and they want to stay on in power. And somewhere things began to go wrong within our systems and governance.
Oh, wonderful. President Mwanawasa.
Yes, the president who did not want to become a president. With the squabbles that the MF had, and what a surprise that whoever were behind the scenes allowed President Mwanawasa to come in government, and the rule of law. I think the idea of governing under the rule of law, it was a pity that we lost President Mwanawasa so early before we could have the people-driven constitutional process. He tried to promote agriculture. I mean, everyone remembers winter maize, as we called it. Winter maize, it wasn't long-lived, but the idea that we could use our water resources for agricultural development was a great attempt under President Mwanawasa. I wish personally that that project had grown deeper and the economy of the country. So the constitutional issues took a lot of time for the presidency of Mwanawasa, that the economic side of things did not really get addressed to the extent of moving us another step, because now we began to look backwards and beginning to follow after the former president and corruption cases. It took a lot of the dynamic of the country in terms of looking backwards in that negative way. Of course, there were things that were done wrongly under the Chiluba government, but the time it took to begin looking backwards instead of saying, how do we look forward to develop our country?
Yeah. Rupiah Banda.
Yes, another man who was fished out of retirement.
True.
Was fished out of retirement to become a vice president, and then by chance, we would say, but also we can say by God's design, he became our president for the term that he was. A bit of work on infrastructural development. That was done during his term in office. And, other stuff may be written. He was a seasoned politician who could have helped to harmonize the country and move us forward from just that part of infrastructural development. But I could say, the part that I remember significantly was the infrastructural development under his leadership.
Good. President Michael Sata.
Wow. May his soul rest in peace. The president we never had. He had very good ideas for the development of our country. I don't know how Zambia would have been if we had 5 years or if we had 10 years under President Michael Sata. He spoke very well about economic development. He spoke very well about national harmony. He spoke very well about many different things. And before he could implement them, unfortunately, the ugliness of death took our dear president away. And I keep wondering, there are narratives of us wondering what would it have been like. Having known President Michael Sata before he became president, the things that he did when he was governor of Sata, the things that he did when he was Minister of Health, the things that he did when he was Minister of Local Government, what would have happened if he had the full term of office, we keep missing that possibility that would have been.
Yeah, correct. Edgar Lungu.
Another president for me who came onto the scene not as expected because of this cruel hand of death, robbing us of our dear presidents. I was not very inspired by President Edgar Lungu when he said he had no vision. Oh my goodness, how could you say you have no vision, Mr. President? He said, my vision is just to continue what President Sata had started and to finish what he had started. Can he the years or the time that was remaining for President Sata? Now I expected a vibrant vision from President Edgar Lungu to say, this is the direction that Zambia should be going. But I missed that. I missed that in his presidency. There was no strong underpinning philosophical guideline in terms of the politics and direction of the country. And during his term, the whole thing of cadreism that rose up, oh my goodness, I think we made a mistake to allow this thing called cadreism rise up in the manner that it did, and beginning to divert the agenda of people to focus on the main things. The politics now began to take a major, and you sometimes wondered, is the president in control of what is happening in the country, or is it the cadres that are in charge of the country? And we began to hear all these things about the corrupt practices and tribalism. And I think for me that the presidency of Edgar Lungu missed something in terms of us to a certain vision, a certain direction. We did see some developments. I don't know whether it was the plans of the previous governments that were just implemented at the time that President Lungu was in power. Of course, each president, some good things and some challenging things that they did during their time.
Oh, okay. And the current president, President Hichilema.
President Hichilema came into power with very good promises. Very good promises. Many Zambians were hopeful that, well, we might see the direction to some of Zambia's major problems. Unfortunately, this is a few years down the line, and his presidency can be summarized by one word: broken promises. 2 words maybe, and a lot of lies. I wish that this president was honest to come back to the people and say, I'm sorry, fellow Zambians, that I lied to you. I did not know what was behind in governance. Now I have experienced it, and this is what I'm seeing. I'm sorry. I was an apology to the president on some of the promises that have not yet been fulfilled. There are big things that he spoke about, big things. I mean, we were told there will be no power cuts in our country. And why are we talking about 12-hour power cuts? Why? We were told everybody will be free in this country because he said nothing should be done to fellow Zambian as was done to him. He was unfairly treated, yes, he was in prison for 100 days or so, and we thought, wow, now we will see something new. But so soon we are going backwards in our democratic dispensation. The freedoms of people are being hampered. How do you have a situation where people clearly threaten a former head of state, people clearly advocating violence in a country, and there's no statement from State House. There's no word coming out from the presidency. So very worrying situation in terms of the trajectory so far. The presidency that was based on a lot of promises and goodwill. And I mean, he started a few things: the employment of teachers, the employment of nurses, the repeal of that law about abusing the president. We thought, wow, we are moving in the right direction. Things are going in the right direction. But the past few months have not been good for motherland in terms of keeping the promises. I hope that there can be a change of heart from our president to get back to what he promised the people. And evidence is there. I mean, videos are there, recordings are there of all these things. I wish that the president could go on a retreat. Those of us who ministry, serving God, when things go wrong in your leadership, we go for a retreat, 1 week or 10 days. I wish that President HH would do a retreat and think again, go back to the promises he made to the people. Zambia has a great opportunity to thrive. There are solutions and answers to the many economic and political challenges that our country faces. It's a question of implementing them. We need those things to be implemented. So I wish our president could go for a retreat to think again about Zambia and not allow what we are currently witnessing, disappearances of political opponents. Why? And who is behind it? Who is behind it? We were told of the gassing situation under the PF government, and HH was in the forefront, condemning the gassing and the things that were happening on the Copper Belt. And now, what is happening with the fermentation of hatred? I mean, religious leaders are being summoned. Religious leaders, preachers, for preaching a sermon, you are being summoned by the police. Come on, let's get real. Let's get real. It's fair for our country to be doing such things. How can somebody visit an office? Just visiting an office. President Edgar Lungu visited the bishop and just visiting. And we know the way things happen in Zambia. Don't cheat us. Don't say, no, it wasn't me, it was the police. We know the way things happen in Zambia. They all talk about receiving instructions from above. Which above? Who is this one who's giving them such bad instructions for the governance of our country? Please, President HH, in case your followers or yourself who listen to this podcast, do not lead our country into destruction. We only have one Zambia. Only one Zambia. You promised very good things in democracy, very good things in economic development. Work on the problems and solve those major issues. Poverty in the country, energy resources in the country, the freedom we need in a democracy. Even if former President Edgar Lungu wanted to come back into active politics, he is free as a Zambian. It should not be persecuted. And the office of former president should be respected, by the way. Look at what is happening in the United States. President Trump is daily in court with so many charges, but he still has security. He still has his entitlements and emoluments. He's been paid. He's been looked after by the state. Let's respect that office. Let's not keep playing these, I call them childish and petty and immature things of going after previous presidents because they have spoken. If you know what you are doing and it's right for the country, then do it and let people be free. Let's all be free and express ourselves without fear or intimidation of any kind. And whichever tribe, whichever group you belong to, I think we should not be taken to a point of destruction in the country. We should not be in a perpetual campaign mode in the country. We can't be doing that. After campaigns, let's focus on development and come back 5 years to campaign. But not every day campaigning. By the way, Mr. President, I was very disappointed with that speech when you said, we will go backwards and get him by the neck. That was very unpresidential, sir. That was a seed that was planted for fermenting hatred. Because now look at what your cadres are doing. They are saying, we will circumcise him. Let him come to this province. What kind of language is that? And all this time, you are silent. All this time, you are silent. The way Zambia is, as long as you keep silent, we believe you are the one who is promoting these things. Stand up and say, not in my name, I condemn these acts, and I challenge those young people to stop, and the police as well. Young people, cadres are having press conferences with TV cameras and everything and threatening hatred in the country, and the police are quiet, silent. They're not arresting those thugs. I know they won't like me, but surely, there must be something that can be done morally, that Zambia must live in a situation where we love one another, we respect one another, and the dignity of all people are respected in our country, regardless of their political persuasions, regardless of their church tradition or religious tradition. Everyone should live freely in Zambia, and let's focus on the real enemies: poverty, ignorance, illiteracy, disease. Let us focus on those things. 60 years ago, we were promised these things will be over. I go back to my village in Eastern Province, in Chipata, in Ngoni area, and I find the same green thatched house built under the philosophy, I say, kwatu sipadziko, ningo pitirira. This world is not my home. 60 years after independence, really?
Yeah.
Please, let us focus on the major issues for our country and develop it to what it should be so that all of us can live happily and freely in motherland.
Oh, powerful. I couldn't even intervene. I think you've given a good reflection and even a reprimand to the current president. It's important because he's the one in charge. He's the one holding the instruments of power. He has ability. Unlike his predecessors, he's the one in charge. His decisions are affecting lives now. The state of our country is worrying. We have a famine affecting our people, up to about 6 million. A drought should not translate to a famine. We saw Joseph in Egypt centuries ago, how he could prepare that even if you have a famine for 7 years, they would stock up for 7 years before. In modern times, drought should not translate to a famine, but this is a crisis we have. We have power cuts, like you said, up to 10 to 12 hours. This has hampered, especially the lives of our small and medium enterprises. Barbershops, welders, salons have been adversely affected. The state of governance. We've been unable to have this podcast with you because we were busy with the police. We couldn't even find time. When I was free, you were not free. And when you were free, I wasn't free. The state of our country with governance issues may remind you the time you served as a voice for the Oasis Forum. We are in that state where we are living in fear, people can't express themselves, and they think there'll be a knock on their door because of what they said. Clearly, we need voices. There are no credible voices other than from the church. What would be your advice to your colleagues back home here?
It's a very sorry situation, very, very sad with what is happening. And yes, we know that there are climatic changes induced by global climate changes, droughts in some areas and floods in other areas and all these other things. But with a government that focuses and plans ahead, these things for sure should not be happening. I think we have very good brains in Zambia. Why don't we have a national endeavor? Why don't we come together as Zambians? First of all, my fellow church leaders in Zambia, I don't know if you have, why don't you visit the president? Sit down with him as modern day prophets of justice. Point out the problems that we are having. And also Zambians on the other side, while the church leaders are doing that, why don't we have an indaba, a space where we can come together to think about the Zambia we want? Let's think again. Let's talk again. Politicians of all shades, religious leaders of all shades, civil society of all shades, let's sit together and ask ourselves, what kind of Zambia do we want? And after we've done that, let's work on how do we implement these recommendations and decisions for motherland. But first, I would urge my fellow church leaders to do something, if not already done. And if you've done it privately, please announce it to the nation that you've been to the president and you've spoken about this hatred that is being fomented, that you've spoken about these freedom slowly shrinking and people living in fear and intimidation, people being abducted. What for, really? And abducting an honorable member of parliament? And no statement? Unless Ambassador Mwamba have missed a statement, have they, police, spoken to the nation now? Has the president addressed this particular single issue?
The police have released 2 statements so far. You are aware that Honorable Banda was discovered yesterday, and the Minister of Home Affairs has also issued a statement, but they're basically political statements. Already, before any investigation is done, they're blaming people, blaming the opposition, instead of addressing the fundamental issue of abduction. You cannot have a minister abducted, a judge abducted, a member of parliament abducted. This is how important this matter is. The president has not yet spoken about it.
Very, very unfortunate and very sad. And that's why in the common psyche of people, they are saying these things were orchestrated by the powers that be. When information lacks, when there is no information, people are allowed to speculate. But then speculation may lead to unnecessary things. We know the power of information. Keep the nation updated with the truth, and the truth will set our nation free. The abduction of Honorable J.J. Banda should be condemned by all peace-loving Zambians. That was unnecessary. What did he do? What kind of crime did he commit that he deserved such kind of treatment? Thank God he's alive, still nursing his wounds, but thank God he's alive. And was the intention to intimidate other opposing voices? We don't know. Was this orchestrated by the opposition? We don't know. By the police? Maybe. How did they find themselves in such a place at the hospital and demanding his transfer from one hospital to another facility and doing it by force? No. I think some pieces do not add up for me. Some pieces do not add up for me. That's why we
unfortunately, Reverend, I was at the hospital at Midland Hospital between 03 and 05:30 when they took JJ away. I tried to use my diplomatic skills to mediate between the family, the medical staff, and the police. What I witnessed was a second abduction. It was brutal, violent, with no duty of care to the patient. It was something that I didn't think could happen in my country. And funds were confiscated. That could tell what I'm saying. I didn't think as a country we had sunk to that level. The doctors were pleading, he needs to be admitted to the ICU. We cannot have this conversation. Let's have the conversation about the patient. And there was a deadlock for over 3 hours, and then force was used. I was sad to witness that incident at Midland Hospital.
We deserve answers. Why? Why are we degenerating into a dictatorial state? Why? What's the reason? It's so unfortunate, and it's annoying. It's infuriating that we should be going to those levels. Every Zambian, not just an honorable member of parliament, every Zambian deserves respect and right of treatment to the hospital of their choice. I've never heard of a situation where a patient has to be forced to be treated in another facility. If it's a security we are concerned about, yes, cordon the hospital facility and let the staff inside do their work and let the family attend to the patient while you provide the security. We have the best doctors in Zambia. If you needed them to be moved from Maina Soko to wherever, do it. It's just uncalled for. It's so unfortunate. And again, information, please. When the country lacks information, when we are seeing video clips flying on social media, seeing you, the police, doing what you did, we begin questioning, where do you want to lead this country to? Please, we want to live in harmony and peace in motherland, not these things that you are beginning to do. Let it stop here. Let it stop here. And give the people information. Come out, Mr. President, and explain what is going on. Did you sanction this? Did you authorize this? And what is your motive? If it is not you, give us the evidence. Lusaka today has cameras in most of major roads. When he was abducted, I'm sure there's a CCTV somewhere that has got footage. Tell the people the truth. What is going on? It's not good for motherland to be degenerating into such things. And it is not helpful at all. Because when people are given a chance to speculate, anything can be said as long as there's no clear information given to the people.
Yeah. Bishop, you have a huge conference that you are addressing the last few days, and I'll need to let you go. And this is now leads to my last question before we get your last views. Where should Zambia go in the next 60 years? What should we do right? What should we abandon?
I think primarily the way we govern ourselves is so fundamental We need to mature in our democratic dispensation that we don't have politicians who fear their own shadows. We should have high levels of tolerance so that we truly live in the principle of our founding fathers of one Zambia, one nation, where we respect our diversity. And so we can live as a people with diverse political opinions, diverse religious opinions, diverse economic opinions. The way we govern ourselves is so critical for the development of our country. And like other people have said before, when you export a Zambian to go and work abroad, Zambians are helping other countries to develop. So we've got the brains that can develop motherland. Why don't we use all this material? Why don't we use all these people, the human resource for our country, so that we craft for ourselves a future where we can truly live in abundant life? Jesus said, the thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy. And sometimes I fear that's what politicians are doing. Stealing, killing, and destroying. Jesus said, I came that they may have abundant life. Can we have a taste and an experience of abundant life in our country, where water is supplied where we need it, where food is available, where medication and hospitals are functional, where the civil service is professional, not politicized, where politicians are accountable to the people who vote them into power, and they remember that they are led by the people through that vote. I dream of a Zambia. I wish we can have a Zambia that has a trajectory of national development where all can experience abundant life here on earth and not just being promised heaven and heaven. It should start here on earth, when we live with respect, with creation and dignity for all people, and economic development that remembers the poor and the vulnerable. The poor and the vulnerable always should be remembered in whatever politics we do in motherland.
Oh, wonderful. My last question would be to, again, on the role of the church during a moment of crisis like this. I know that our country has descended to, we are so polarized, and sometimes I think men of the cloth fear to speak, because when they speak, especially if they speak against government, they'll be accused of being or belonging or having sympathies to another political party. And when they speak for government, they are also deemed as party cadres. The line has been lost. How can the church reclaim its position, its role, as a salt of the earth, where they give guidance in critical moments as this? We all can't just stand polarized, with bridges apart. We risk breaking this country. We need that moral voice. What will be both your advice, your guidance, looking at your immense experience in these matters in Zambia, in Kenya, and now you speak for over 27 countries on issues of justice, the role of the church in this era, in this period?
I think we need to recover a few important things. First of all, at the theoretical or philosophical level. Number one is the need for us to understand, to recover reconciled diversity. We need to recover what does it mean to live in reconciled diversity. We should be reconciled to one another as a people, but also the philosophy of Ubuntu, where my humanity is connected humanity. I am, therefore we are. At the theoretical level, we need to do that. At the practical level, we can't do these things in silos. One thinking out there, another thinking out there. And that's why I think it's time. It's a kairos moment for us as Zambians to call again an indaba. A space where we can think about our motherland and what we want it to be. The Council of Churches in Zambia, the Evangelical Fellowship, the Conference of Catholic Bishops, the ICOS, Islamic Association of Zambia, the Hindu Association, all these organizations should be able to come together in a space to think, and after we've thought and analyzed, in a space to act for our country. And let us stop this theology. I'm sorry, my friends from some church quarters that have a cheap theology that focuses on prosperity of the preacher. Only the preacher should be made weak, and not the followers and not the people. Let us not begin to take ourselves in narrow ideologies that simply promote my welfare. We should be thinking about our welfare as a people, as a nation. And so I think we should rise up as a Zambian church, not to be intimidated, and to know that when we are prophets in the country, modern day prophets, not the ones that prophesy about soccer, not the ones that prophesy about who will win which political party. No, I'm talking about prophets who stand up for justice and righteousness, condemn corruption, condemn tribalism, condemn all these pettiness that narrows people instead of looking at the bigger picture of how can we together flourish as a country. And there are voices there in Zambia. I say to you, my siblings, my sisters and brothers, rise up. We should not be intimidated. Speak and speak and speak until we all attain a space where we can truly flourish and experience a bad life this side of the grave.
Oh, powerful, powerful. I'll invite you to make your last remarks, Reverend.
Well, let me say thank you very much, Ambassador Mwamba, for this opportunity that you have given me. I know somebody somewhere might say, now I belong to your political party. Unfortunately, it should not be like that. So thank you for this opportunity. And my fellow Zambians who are listening, my greatest plea, we've done all the praying. We should not stop, we should continue, but we should invest also in working. And how do we work? Mobilize. Mobilize your people with an agenda of love, an agenda of tolerance, an agenda of respecting diversity, an agenda that says we want good for Mother Zambia. We want the very best for our country. And each one of us, as we mobilize our churches, our communities of faith, as we mobilize our civil society organizations, as we mobilize, together we can do something, transform the country, especially from that poverty which cripples us at all times. And for you politicians, please keep your promises. And if you lie, we Zambians are very forgiving. If you come back and say, I am sorry, I'm telling you, I'm assuring you, Zambians will forgive you, and just don't end at an apology. Now tell us the plan of action of how you will create that river, which one politician was saying. It's simple. Just create a river and create a channel and there'll be power. Apologize and then do that and let people have access to energy, let people have access to the things that we have an environment where we can all thrive economically and politically. God bless Mother Zambia. God bless her people at all times.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank you once again for sparing so much time. And I pulled you out of the conference and then you woke up very late, because of the time difference. Reverend Dr. Japhet Ndhlovu, I'm so grateful and thank you for providing that counsel to our country. To our dear viewers, I was hosting Reverend Dr. Japhet Ndhlovu. He's currently with the United Church of Canada. He was born and educated here in Zambia, you heard from Flora. He's got education from Ireland, from South Africa. He's currently a resident in Canada, Toronto. He's serving as a global program coordinator in an executive position for Global Partnership Church and Mission Unit, responsible for 27 countries. He previously, he of course is an ordained minister of Epsworth Pastoral and was in charge in Newfoundland, in Canada. Newfoundland. He previously served as General Secretary for the Council of Churches in Zambia. He was the executive staff at the All Africa Conference of Churches based in Nairobi. He was also a senior lecturer and head of theology department in the Presbyterian University of East Africa. He is from the Reformed Church here in Zambia. And I love what he says. His personal vision is to be transformative agent and a facilitator of building bridges that liberate and that unite voices of sacred defiance. He preaches sacred defiance. And while transforming history, he seeks to share his Christian faith by actively getting engaged in transforming history and working to end oppression. Working to end oppression everywhere and to participate in acts of justice. That's why you see him speak so passionately and condemn without equivocation wherever he sees injustice rise. He's provided, I think, momentous guidance in this time of our country, especially that we are celebrating 60 years, a Diamond Jubilee for our country. So it's a time to reset, and I think Dr. Reverend Japhet Ndhlovu has helped provide that reset. He has called for an endeavor, and he has called on the church to have more moments with the president who's currently in charge, so that our country steers towards a path of justice and development. Until we have another guest, God bless you, God bless our country, and shalom, shalom.